that's
We know how it goes.
Yeah. I thought it meant speak louder. That's what I was doing. Yes. Can you hear me?
Good.
We're good to go?
We're good.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming out today. I know it's been a full day of events, and we have events scheduled tomorrow. So thank you for coming to the 3:45 to 4:45 p.m. panel to support our students in the Africana Studies Department and the Caribbean Studies program. I'm super proud of our students. I think we do have the best students here at Brooklyn College. And our panel is entitled Interdisciplinary Approaches and Diverse Perspectives on the African Diaspora. And two of our students, through their presentations, showcase possibilities and multiple dimensions of Africana Studies research, from historical inquiry to social political analysis to practical transformative application. And our first student presenter will be Aaliyah Martin, and her presentation is entitled Deconstructing the Paradox, Haitian Bodies, Blackness, and Faith. We put our hands together to welcome Aaliyah.
Okay, is this the mic I'm speaking into? First time in an auditorium, but hello everyone, I'm Aaliyah Martin, and today I'll be doing my presentation on deconstructing the paradox, Haitian bodies, blackness, and labor. So according to the news, the media, and the way history is taught, Haiti is a space that has never prospered and cannot prosper without colonial help. This presentation seeks to investigate the way labor has been one of the leading ways in which not only Haitians have historically established themselves in various societies, but also how it's been used as a tool to repeatedly strip them of their rights in a unique manner. Haitians are rarely even given the illusion of succeeding through meritocracy, and instead, when they have shown determination to live better, colonial powers have heavily sanctioned them. So some of the themes that I'll be talking about today is some historical context and the impact of being the first Black republic, the cycle of exploitation after the abolition of slavery, some ideologies stripping Haitian workers of their humanity, the way Haitian laborers are treated today, and why this research is currently relevant, and finally, some further research and possibly discussion questions. So to provide some context, in 1804, Haiti became the biggest threat to slavery because of the Haitian Revolution. That meant that Haitians were the global North's #1 obstacle to the kind of profit that came with free labor. So those colonial powers have heavily been sanctioning them ever since. Constant strategic othering to portray Haitians as enemies to the rest of the world ensued. An interesting aspect of the early construction of the other manifested in the governor of Louisiana writing in 1804 that Haitians being able to communicate with enslaved people in the US would make, quote, our Black population pregnant with future mischief, as if the desire for freedom and self-determination was a disease that could be transmitted from Haitians to African Americans. On the other hand, on the island of Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic's historical ideologies really encompass global narratives against Haiti as well, differentiating their neighbors and their fellow Dominicans of Haitian descent as their polar opposite, dark-skinned African foreigners, whereas Dominicans are European, Spanish-speaking Catholics, and Haitians are African, Creole-speaking, and practice voodoo, making Haitian souls inherently different. This ideology allowed Dominicans to justify the harmful rhetoric that Haitians were only able to work unskilled, low-paying jobs, that they were criminals and that they don't deserve citizenship, so they should be deported. And through this expo, as well as my thesis, I really wanted to debunk the myth that Haiti has always been the way it is constantly showcased in the news and the media. Haitian labor, but also its gorgeous flora and fauna, earned the then French colony the title of La Perle des Antilles, or the Pearl of the Antilles, during the 18th century. It was the richest and most profitable colony in the world, producing 60% of the world's coffee and 40% of the world's sugar, imported by France and Britain, and nearly 20% of the French population depended on trade with Haiti for its livelihood. I argue that it was then that the deeply racialized trends of deadly exploitation started. Haitian workers today might not be subjugated to slavery the way their ancestors were, but the inextricable relationship between race and singularly cruel labor conditions remain. American capitalists, through transnational processes, still exploit Black bodies for profit and power, like how by 1935, more than 50,000 Haitians worked on U.S. plantations in the Dominican Republic and 30,000 of them in Cuba. Again, it might not have been formal enslavement, but they were seriously taken advantage of, as they were promised a better life and good wages, but in the end took home nearly no money at all. And unfortunately, one of the biggest winners in this deal was the corrupt Haitian government, as at the time, immigration fees were by far the most important source of the internal revenue in Haiti, accounting for a full 31% of the total in 1924. Similarly, later in the 1970s, Jean-Claude Duvalier, or Papa Doc, withheld up to $8 million each year of Haitian plantation work money, half of which was promised to be given back to them, but never was. This meant that Haitian workers did back-breaking plantation work for $2.21 a day on average. Next, I'd like to take a deeper look at some of the dehumanizing ideologies that have been used on Haitians to allow such deplorable working conditions throughout the years. The devastating 2010 earthquake reintroduced some of those unique ways in which Haitians are treated by the rest of the world, like how several CNN anchors portrayed Haitian mothers in particular as indifferent, claiming that they willfully abandoned their children without providing context, or insisting that they never saw Haitians crying at the disaster. Constructing a reality where Haitians were apathetic at this amount of destruction and death was extremely harmful, and really introduced the idea that the Haitian psyche is inherently different and twisted. The same narrative enabled the Dominican Republic's government to violently enforce discriminatory legislation despite Haitian labor being an essential part of the economy. And that successful othering led to a world in which Haitian bodies are expendable commodities while also being dangerous. Because despite Haitian migrant labor contributing to 10% of the Dominican Republic's total workforce and 30% of all new construction projects, they are not deemed worthy citizens. Actually, Professor Ranjit Singh's class really introduced me to a very interesting documentary called Needed But Unwanted. And I really believe that phrase encompasses the situation perfectly. Haitian bodies needed as laborers that enrich the country, improve the economy, but unwanted as people. A 2024 article even describes the lives of some of those living in this reality. Quote, men with whom I spoke detailed experiences with chronic exposure to occupational exploitation, daily anti-Haitian microaggressions from Dominican supervisors, and rampant extortion and police violence. So a lot of my presentation has been about the past, but this exploitation, this othering, this dehumanization is happening right now still. Haitian laborers are disenfranchised and constructed as disposable. I argue the ever-growing immigration industrial complex has been perfected with Haitian workers, because Haitians exist at the intersection of anti-Blackness, xenophobia, and classism, facilitating the violence they are faced with daily in spaces they contribute so much to, such as, but not limited to, the Dominican Republic, US, or France, and it's often masked as nationalism to protect the actual citizens of the country from foreigners or Haitians that those countries refuse to recognize or give citizenship to. or said eloquently by Krauss, quote, "This machine greased by violence, fear, and impunity converges on the production of hypernationalism, a racialized rhetoric of an immigrant threat, systematic illegality, and low-wage labor routes that uphold powerful political economic forces." As mentioned beforehand, it cannot be ignored that anti-Black sentiments have dictated the rights of Haitian workers for centuries. However, Vargas argues that even though they both are inextricable from the conversation around the Haitian treatment by the world, quote, "In the context of Haitian and Dominican relations, anti-Blackness has been used by European colonists and Dominican elites for over 3 centuries in the meticulous formation of anti-Haitianism to leverage political and economic control." Like how the Trump administration really made incredible efforts to stop a lot of Haitians' protected status so they can stay in the United States. Fortunately, it was stopped by federal judges. And on April 16th, the House of Representatives approved legislation to shield 350,000 Haitians from deportation for only 3 years, though. And while I was doing this research, it might be nitpicky, but I found interesting wording used by New York Democrat Representative Laura Gillen. And she said about the vote that it was a pivotal milestone in the fight to protect the hardworking members of our community from the horrors in Haiti. So, further research can be done on the dynamics between colonial powers and Haitians, and ever since they successfully established the first Black Republic, the US, France, the Dominican Republic, and other countries have constantly criminalized, exploited, and made millions off of Haitians, all the while marginalizing and invisibilizing them. Despite this constant rejection and disrespect, the global North has proven they need Haitians much more than they let on, or at least I think so. Thank you.
State your questions. Thank you so much. That was excellent.
Change over. So our next presenter is Ronique Prince Adams, and Ronique's presentation is entitled Education as Ideological Outreach, should be using the mic, Soviet Influence in the Caribbean Through Academic Exchange. Ronique, all yours. You got it.
Hello, everyone. Give me 1 second. I'm organizing my notes. Okay. So, can you guys hear me? Okay. Wait, how do I change this? I just tap it?
No. Did you create the slides for Canva?
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
let's go press the.
All right.
You got it? Okay, go. And restate the title because it's different.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ronique Prince Adams. I'm a junior here at Brooklyn College with the SEEK program and the CUNY BA program. And I'm a law and government and Africana Studies double major. And today I will be presenting on education as ideological outreach in the Soviet Union's influence in Guyana. And I titled it "The Call is Coming from Outside the House" because I'm kind of critiquing how the Soviet Union is centered as an alternate option to US imperialism. So yeah. Next. Okay. So yeah, I already said actually. Yeah. So I'll present on the strategies, specifically the strategies they use to appeal to third world countries within Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and the Caribbean by way of educational initiatives, specifically after the death of Stalin, because in Stalin's time, none of this international communism would have happened if he was ruling. And specifically, I wanted to use Guyana as my case study because I'm Guyanese, and I wanted to analyze this point in history where over 100,000 students studied in the US. And as I said again, to decenter the glamorous appearances Soviet leaders may have characterized their progress with, specifically their nationality policies that created a consciousness among a lot of peoples of Russia. And to preface, a lot of quantitative studies are lacking both on the Soviet Union side and the National Guyanese Archive, so it was hard to find quantitative data. So I have broad statistics, but I have a lot of qualitative sources describing this moment in history, and I hope it will expand and become more inclusive. So yeah. So beginning with the road to communism. So we're going back to 1917 now, when the Bolsheviks, which soon became the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, first took over, and their leader led a party full of dreams. And the main dream was to achieve communism, obviously, and this is the Marxist-Leninist timeline of how specifically the Bolsheviks believed that the Soviet Union would achieve communism. So they believed, specifically Lenin, the leader of the party at the time, that the bourgeoisie had their cake, and now was the time for the proletariats, the working class, to have their cake too. And he believed specifically that the first should be last and the last should be first. But he also faced a lot of major hurdles during this time, trying to modernize people, specifically across the Soviet Union. And if you guys see the map of the Soviet Union, it's very big. So trying to spread that message without the money, which was their main issues, because the Communist Party of the Soviet Union during that time was lacking in funds. The illiteracy rate was very high, specifically within women in their 50s. And Russia's proletariat class has strong ties to the peasantry, so every attempt they would make to kind of persuade the Soviet citizens to move towards communism or become more socialist was kind of ineffective, because they were like, we can just go home with our cows and dedicate ourselves to agriculture. However, although this was mission impossible, Lenin believed where there's a will, there's a way, and he talked about a lot of state-sponsored propaganda, specifically this one. And this one basically talks about new Soviet people, and I believe this was published during the 20s in the Soviet Union, and it's basically a picture depicting the new Soviet woman, the opportunities that the October Revolution in the Soviet Union could offer a lot of women during that time. So committing themselves to self-improvement, education, which I'll be focusing on in my presentation, literacy, being clean, and being cultured and vigilant. And across the years, this was in the 1920s, 1930s, where this type of propaganda was being promoted. And that picture on the right there is showing working Soviet women and all the progress that has been made. And in the 1950s and 60s, more than 50% of women made up the Soviet labor force, and 98.5% of the USSR citizens aged 9 to 49 could read and write during that time. So that was major progress for them. Okay, so now I will talk about propaganda specifically, on comparing it between the US and the USSR. So to set the scene a little bit, during this time of, and prior to the time of these educational initiatives across Africa, the Caribbean, prompted by the Soviet Union, the Cold War was really very much present, and it expanded beyond education. And one way they informed their citizens about depictions of the US or the USSR was through propaganda, and they used it as political tools to misinform or inform their citizens, essentially. And the questions that the USSR prioritized on the left here was basically reaching towards the racial injustice within America. They often wonder, specifically Khrushchev, specifically in their UN General Assembly meetings, how a country so advanced, so modernized, can have something so wicked and something so ingrained in their history, and even, not even their history, but as they're making history right now in their modern times, racism so prevalent. And in this picture, you can see members of the KKK lined up to block a little black child to go to school, but this has a double meaning of the white picket fence dream that America loves to gain. They just like to ramble off of it, saying that you should come to America, we have this, we have that, but this is what a lot of black citizens faced on their day-to-day during the Cold War period. And
notice the lynch in one of the KKK members' hands.
Yeah, exactly. So that's showing to the realities, the struggles that people have to face even going to school on their day-to-day, being killed just for trying to educate yourself. And yeah, the questions that the US prioritized now was basically the domino theory. If one country falls to communism, the rest is going to fall to communism. And we really see this going to fruition in the Vietnam War, which the US did lose in the end, but they spent so much money and lost so much lives trying to stop communism because they heavily believed in the domino theory. And it just went to show, it was just very interesting to see how this play out in the cases of propaganda in the USSR and the US. And yeah. Okay, before I start this video, I just want to give a brief intro if nobody knows the person speaking here. That is Nikita Khrushchev. At the time, this is him at the General Assembly meeting, speaking out about the neocolonialism that's emerging in the 1960s, specifically in the case of the Congo and Patrice Lumumba, and he's talking about the injustices being faced by a lot of third world countries during this period. Is there a volume?
Try it again.
Okay. So this is actually a clip from the UN General Assembly meetings. This is one of almost a dozen speeches that Nikita Khrushchev gave at the time on specifically the case of the Congo around the time of Patrice Lumumba's assassination, because the Soviet Union, just for a little background, they were so strongly aligned with Congo because obviously they were a third world country that just gained their independence, but also because Congo was the resourceful heart of Africa. So not only would it look good for the USSR to be aligned with them and actually help their citizens out by giving them education, but also them gaining some resources that Africa had to offer, specifically because the US used the natural resources like the cobalt and the uranium to build the first nuclear weapon that bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So this would also be a big power play and look really good on the USSR side. So yeah. So now, why Guyana? So I already told you guys why I'm interested in Guyana, but specifically just to contextualize it, in 1966, Guyana became an independent nation within the Commonwealth, and in 1970 it became the second Caribbean colony to become a republic. And it's just used as a case study. And yeah, the ideological comparisons between capitalism versus communism, it made, because Guyana just gained their independence, them so young to be able to sway either communist or be able to go to capitalist. So yeah, and specifically, it was very interesting reading this book that explained the working class in Guyana way before they even gained independence, but also the CIA documents that depicted Soviet education as less than, and the students who come from the Caribbean and Latin America who go to the Soviet Union on educational stints for 4, 5, or 6 years. At the time, they weren't really gaining anything by going there in comparison to if they were to go to America and gain an education. Okay, so after Nikita Khrushchev's visit to Indonesia and Bali, he actually announced a Soviet decree that he would establish a university specifically dedicated to students from third world countries, and he named it after Patrice Lumumba because of his close political ties with him. And it was called the Patrice Lumumba People's Friendship University. And in their first year of announcing and opening applications, over 40,000 applicants applied for just over 600 initial spots. And by 1980, around 1,300 students graduated from this university. And the statistics are kind of vague, but more than 17,000 students from a lot of countries, including Guyana, were enrolled in the 67 to 68 academic year. But the most common nationalities you would find in the Soviet Union, who were natives to the Soviet Union, were from Ghana, Indonesia, Iraq, and Somalia. So student experience in the USSR. So one of my main sources I use for this research is actually from a Guyanese student, and he published a book in 1964 of his experience within the Soviet Union. And it's not his most famous book because it's critiquing the Soviet Union at a time where they were at such strong odds with the United States. And one interesting quote in his book that really kind of captures and encompasses my research is, it states, "You don't know, Russians were the biggest liars in the world, not because we're dishonest, but because we have so much fantasy." And a lot of students from the African diaspora, they viewed Khrushchev's dream to kind of educate them as kind of like a false reality in a sense, because yeah, they were benefiting from the education they were getting that they couldn't get at home, but was it really worth the discrimination that they faced when they were in Moscow and other parts of the Soviet Union? And an example of this was the 1963 Red Square protest. And this is monumental because it was the second political demonstration on Moscow's Red Square after the October Revolution in 1917. And around 700 students came together from the African diaspora in response to a Ghanaian medical student named Edmund, whose death was seen as it was ruled out as a suicide, but it really spoke out to a lot of students because of the underlying racism that they faced in the Soviet Union. And yeah, that protest basically sparked a lot of controversy, and specifically within the US, and it made people question, is the Soviet Union just a lesser evil, or is it the same amount as the United States? So it really sparked the question of, what's the point of going to the USSR if the same things are going to keep on happening to us here? And some questions that I really thought about when doing this research are on the screen here. And the first one is, what were the lasting effects of the Soviet Union educational decree to establish the Patrice Lumumba University? So a lot of students actually went back to their countries and they helped develop their countries. A lot of the common majors that they majored in was engineering, medicine, the social sciences. But another interesting fact that I found is that a lot of students also came to America. So while their intention was to educate these students from Guyana, the Caribbean, Africa, so they can go back to their countries and pour into their own economies, some of them were actually a lot of them were going to the UK and the US. And I wonder if they saw this as just a waste of an initiative and waste of money in their eyes. And the second one, why didn't the US get involved with Khrushchev's educational initiative? I believe I touched on this, and a lot of federal documents touch on this as well, that they just believed that the USSR didn't compare when it came to education, which is kind of ignorant. And the third one, did the Soviet efforts succeed in shaping political or intellectual perspectives? I feel like this one is up for debate, but in my eyes, I really don't think so. Specifically, if you look towards how the news today, and specifically within Guyana, how it's leaning towards U.S. dependency with the ties between President Ali and Trump. I feel like it's very ironic for this moment in history to happen, for us to get here now. And how do we see educational initiatives manifest today? And it really made me think of how, if we even kind of like prioritize ideology as a way, like, if we even prioritize a way, like, even if we see education as something to create an ideology within third world students, is what I'd say. So yeah, those are just questions that I kind of want to build off of as I build my research a bit more, because this is preliminary. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. This is my works cited, and thank you for listening.
We have questions, comments. Thank you for that. I was just taking notes and pages of notes as I was learning.
I would like to start some discussion around it.
Okay, let me just, if I can ask the presenter to answer.
I think I could already speak for myself.
Okay.
Okay, so I do have one question regarding the whole communism going around in Guyana, seeing how it is still prevalent today, like, you know how, like, say for example, how you see how some of these people are out there passing around these socialist, communist newspapers about certain issues that are currently going on in our community today. Do you think that might have any connection to what you're doing right now with the presentation?
I actually didn't look that far into it. Most of my presentation focused on the historical aspect of it. And
Like, no, seriously, there are, sometimes you would see some people going around on campus, on the college campus, between both West Quad and East Quad, that they would be passing around newspapers to go ahead telling people to convert to communism or join the Marxist Union, like a socialist kind of. Like, say for example, I did just receive one of these articles. Why are you? Okay. Okay, so what happening is that I see, sometimes from day to day, I see these Marxist or communist, these socialist communist newspapers going around, and people are passing them to students and faculty members during the day.
I think these students just learned about this, and I feel like even a lot of students don't even know about the history of educational initiatives, the Soviet Union trying to appeal to a lot of third world students, or third world students. And I feel like we're just tired of seeing the news and no change seems like it's being happening. Well, no change, there seems to be no change happening, specifically within capitalism in America. So they're trying to look for alternatives, I think.
Yeah, as much as I really dislike the U.S. capitalist system, I'm also very careful. I also need to be careful because of USSR and communism, historical context.
Yeah, I feel like historical context is very important before you try to go out and spread a message. So you have to understand the history of what happened before and how, and things change. The communism back then is totally different from the communism that they're trying to spread today. So I feel like setting this presentation taught me a lot about communism. And my other class, the Soviet Union as a multi-ethnic empire with Professor O'Keefe, was
Our
very,
current mayor is a socialist.
yeah.
Are there other questions? I want to make sure everyone has a chance. Yes.
I don't think anything.
Just for the report.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Both of your presentations were beautiful. I see you guys put a lot of hard work and dedication into your presentations. You should both be very proud of yourselves. I wanted to talk about about your presentation. My grandfather was Haitian, and I learned a lot about the Haitian Revolution and ways that Haitian bodies were exploited against, especially in the United States, through my grandfather and stories that he would tell me, as well as some research that I did about HIV and the way that it spread in the United States and how that was
epidemic?
Yes, and how that was blamed on Haitian bodies and Haitian people. But I didn't know that much about what you said in your presentation. I'd like to ask you if you know about that intersectionality between Haitians and Blackness, and to ask if there was any, or to ask what your highlight is, I guess, on that intersectionality between like the ways that Haitians have been treated in the United States through time and Blackness. You talked about it a little bit in your presentation. Yeah, if that makes sense. I can try to rephrase it if it doesn't.
But I mean, I feel like a lot, like that could be its own entire panel. Like there's a lot of, I think that when it comes to Haiti, like every single conversation, every single, just the way that they're treated, I feel like the fact that that you can't separate Blackness from Haiti, that it's so, like there's no, a lot of the nations like in the Caribbean are sort of like, there's this dynamic between like, it's a lot of just multiracial people and a lot of people of African descent, but that might just be like seen as like an in-between, maybe Black, maybe not, but with Haiti, it being like such a prevalent aspect of their identity, something that can't really be, there's no confusion with it. I feel like
Digested?
it's really just essential with the way that they're understood. And in America, there is that, as you said, there like that intersectionality with xenophobia as well, since they are from the Caribbean. I feel like it's really that the relationship between those things that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I appreciate you. I have another question about your presentation. So I don't know much about Guyana at all. I have some Guyanese friends, but one thing that really struck me in your presentation, again, I understand it's preliminary, so if I'm asking you not. But I didn't know about the Soviets' influence on so much of the Caribbean, and I'd love to know like how your process went with research and like how you plan on moving forward.
Okay, so for my research, I actually had a lot of meetings and emails back and forth with my professor for my Soviet Union class, and she really helped with giving me sources. She's the one that told me about the Moscow is Not My Mecca book from John Carter, who was a Guyanese student. And I also got in contact with a professor. She's actually a chair of the Africana department at a school in Pennsylvania. And I talked to her about her experience a little bit. She's busy, so I didn't really get to incorporate it in the presentation. But one thing I did want to add in the presentation is just like how Guyanese leadership played a role in this too, specifically with Forbes Burnham and Shetty Jagan. They were like prime ministers of Guyana during the time, like after Guyana became a republic. But because of time, I didn't get to it. But I really want to look into that more to make the presentation more holistic and make it more like easier to understand from a Guyanese perspective.
I think you did a good job doing that already, but I understand.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions?
My question, two questions. First is for Olivia. In our conversation, we spoke a lot about the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, right? On one hand, they idole. On the other hand, they're hardworking, right? And they've built the economy in Springfield, Ohio. Have you considered, I know we spoke about it, but have you considered that as well in your analysis, this paradox, another example of a paradox? These Haitian bodies are constructed.
Yeah, of course, because when I was thinking about the subject for my thesis in Africana Studies, I think I was about that documentary that I mentioned in my presentation and how it's very much something that's absolutely happening right now, and how like I did also for Professor Richard Singh's class, I did an oral history project, and I remember speaking with a Haitian person, and I was like, it's great that the like Springfield community is like wants to defend like Haitians and the Haitian people in the community, but the number one thing was that they kept insisting like those rumors aren't true. They are so hardworking. Like this person working at my plant is like the most diligent worker. He like does so much more than everyone else, and I was like, it's an interesting thing, like for the first thing to say that they work so much harder than everyone else and that's why they should be here. Right. I think that I think they should be here because they are people that deserve to live just peaceful lives. And so, yes, that's something that I'll definitely just go deeper into on my thesis.
Thank you so much. I want to say also that your presentations the actual slides were well done. Earlier, the way that you use Haitian art throughout every slide, and really the ways in which you found these images are the actual like propaganda, the actual, I guess what was printed by USSR then. So thank you all for that. It was a journey, just like looking at the images, right? Really, I want to know if you have spoken to Guyanese people today to ask them, if they even remember what they think, if they, remember any of this. I realize that in the Caribbean, sometimes people don't really talk about things especially, this is very political because it would have been those who were aligned before freedom at that time. So what a guy needs today in Guyana or even in diaspora, what are their memories of this or
So
experience?
first, I got this idea. I know she doesn't want me to say her name, but shout out Dr. Talk, because I didn't know, and she's actually Guyanese. I don't. Yeah, she told me that Guyanese students actually went to Cuba to get education and the Soviet Union, and I was like, Guyanese people in the Soviet Union? And then I talked to my aunt about it, and then she just had such a negative reaction when I said the word Russia, and it made me think of how Russia is depicted in Guyana. And just knowing this history of students going over there, I wanted to know, like, and this is what I'll kind of navigate after, how the relationship between Russia and Guyana has changed, specifically within the collapse of the Soviet Union. And talking with the professor, the Africana professor from Pennsylvania, she actually told me that that time that she spent in Russia was like the most like life-changing, like 6 years of her life. So I feel like there is kind of mixed reviews from, so yeah.
Other comments? Questions?
Good afternoon. Thank you both. I'll start with Maria. So in your characterization of the Dominican Republic, how they depicted it, unworthy of citizenship as foreign African and ultimate foreigners that would never belong, did you or will you bring in 1937 massacre of 35,000 by the dictator Rafael Trujillo, in which they used in part the linguistic shibboleth, but in the sense so that not only are they not worthy, they're not even worthy this, right? It makes sense. How does that tie in with that? Your work?
Yes, I'll definitely, in my paper, I'll definitely talk about that. There were so many things that I wanted to include in my presentation, but that, like, I found a few primary sources of some interviews with people that survived the massacre as well. But it was just, yes, I did want to, because that, like, dichotomy about how just the Dominican Republic wants to be seen as this just white Christian Spanish speaking country, as opposed to Haiti being Creole speaking and like not Catholic, like that being just used as the like absolute just opposite. And I will talk about yes, the massacre and the ways, like, just also the ways just Haitians have understood, like, just because it is just such a just defining moment in the way that Haitians, like, just understood the way they were perceived. And I really do want to just prioritize their own voices and, like, the ways, because I did read a few like firsthand accounts of like how Haitians understood like why the Dominican Republic would do something like this, and just the ways that they used Spanish versus Creole to just determine who was worthy of surviving or not. So yes, I could just do so much with that event, and I hope you justice.
Thank you. Just add, so not only just Spanish or Creole, but the fact that the language was determined who was Haitian, a large population of African, or blended of African Spanish, so this line that they try to draw to, and the only way, I guess, delineated was linguistic, and also you had at that time lots that been that at least that they were. So it kind of provides this myth of I mentioned the fact that when that they were all around the world African American, included linguistics one marker. That's what we played. For Ronique, I have a couple of questions. One, I guess I'm more familiar with this open Grenada, but I'm interested to know if there were ever attempts by the to installing type of military installation in Guyana, and for the many Guyanese who were not able to study, were there local kind of education initiatives spearheaded by the in Guyana came across it?
I'm not sure, but from a document I was reading, it's an official document, I think by the CIA that was released like in the 1990s. It said that they actually funded Burnham to like establish his PNC party because they believed that he would be such a good ally to the U.S. rather in comparison to Chetty Jagan, who would bring communism and destruction to Guyana, and they wouldn't want that in the Western Hemisphere. But I really haven't seen that. But I've seen in the case of Kenya, I was actually, while I was doing the poster presentation earlier, I was talking to this woman and she said that the Soviet Union actually installed like teaching and vocational schools within Kenya, as opposed to the just the laws and like the view of the Kenyan government that they was opposed to that, but the Soviet Union was like, we really don't care. Your people need help. We're gonna help them. So yeah. They're really like a speaker of the people, and it makes sense because that's how the Bolsheviks emerged as a voice for the working class. So yeah.
Loving all these questions and comments and interchanges. Any more questions?
I think I'd like to add on for the, excuse me, what is your name? Because you mentioned the Soviet influence on Grenada. I'd like to know.
Are you asking me or her?
Honestly, anybody.
In the fall, I'm teaching major themes in Caribbean studies. Look at the Grenada Revolution. So come take a class.
I knew that it was the Grenada Revolution that they were fighting, but I didn't know that it was the Soviet.
Well, to come take the class. we can talk more after.
There you go. You got an offer. Any other final comments? Before I turn it to Professor Ratchison to close out. I just want to thank you so much. I learned so much. I was just taking pages and pages of notes, and I'm excited to see where you take the research and what you do with it. So thank you so much for your thinking and your research and for contributing to this conversation. Yes, and enjoy the journey you're on with your research. Thank you. And thank you. And at 5 p.m., 11 students presenting their research. So hang around and join us then. Thank you so much.
No, I have my own cards. I don't know where they went.